Ladies, gentlemen, and tarnished of all ages, how would you like to become the Lord of Gravity? No, I'm not talking about Radon, sadly. I mean, none of us could possibly live up to be as much of a badass as the guy who learned magic to ride his scrawny horse, but there are other ways to make a name for yourself in this world, such as pushing and pulling every reasonably sized enemy in the game to put them where you think they should be. Do you want them to stand far away? Well, yeah, you can do that. Bring them close? Oh, are they too close now? Just push them away again. There are two unique swords in Elden Ring that have special abilities specifically for the purpose of messing with your opponent's positioning. And today we're going to make a fun little build to use them together, making you a little annoying ball of repositioning fun. No, this won't one-shot people or bosses, but that isn't the point. The point is fun and enjoying yourself, because after all, more than anything else, the reason that we play video games is for fun. And what better way to do that than messing with every enemy in the game by just flinging them back and forth at will. The way that we do this then is with these two special swords, the first of which is the Onyx Lord's Greatsword. This is a pretty beefy curved greatsword. It does decent damage and it has an Ash of War that makes it push anything in close range backwards, as well as causing a knockdown. The other sword is the Alabaster Lord's Sword, which has the opposite effect, pulling in distant enemies. This is a similar effect to the Gravitas Ash of War, but this weapon's unique skill itself is more powerful and has a longer range to boot.
You will come here. Now.
With this combination, you are in complete control of the fight. As well, you can roll out of the animation before the push or pull itself if it feels unsafe, and the attacks each have a decent amount of poise, though not quite hyper armor, so you do have to pick and choose your moments to use them. The poise itself was specifically added to both of these in patch 1.07, which happened quite recently, and this change in itself makes this build quite a bit stronger, letting you trade into attacks if you want to. As well, both of these weapons have a unique effect of being 20% stronger against gravity-based enemies, which includes any of the Falling Star beasts and the Astel bosses, among others. The weird thing about all of this is the stat requirement to make it function though. Both of the weapons scale off of strength, but the Onyx Lord's Greatsword specifically also has B intelligence scaling, and both weapons have a reasonably high int requirement to wield in the first place. So how does this all come together to make this actually strong then? Of course, as I said earlier, this build is more about fun than anything else, but that doesn't stop us from making it really good as well. I mean, there are tons of ways to buff your build in Elden Ring, and these can even make silly builds quite strong as well. That said, there are of course the weapons themselves, the Onyx Lord's Greatsword, and that comes from the boss from within the sealed tunnel, along the way to the Divine Tower itself within Altus Plateau. The Alabaster Lord's Sword comes from the Lake of Rot, from a boss that you can find atop a pillar located here after activating all the platforms in the area. Then we have the armor set you'll be using today, which is the Spellblade armor, boosting all damage from magic and cold based Ashes of War by 2% per armor piece for a full 8% bonus damage when wearing the full set. This comes from the body of the Sorcerer Rogier, which you can find the Round Table hold once you've gotten far enough in the story for him to, well, die. After that, we have the Carrion Glintblade Staff, which we use for a couple of reasons. First, this build is gravity based, and there are gravity magic sorceries as well, so you know, even if just for flavor more than anything else, feel free to stick a couple of those gravity based spells in your build. And once you do this, will be the strongest staff that you can use at the specific intelligence we reach at level 150, as every staff scales differently depending on your intelligence range. This weapon can be found on the top level of the Highway Lookout Tower on the eastern side of Liurnia up in the cliffs. That said, while you want to be casting with that staff, you also want to hold a different staff in your other hand while you're doing gravity magic, which is the Meteorite Staff, which boosts the damage of gravity sorceries. You can acquire this one at the Street of Sages ruins in the northwest end of the Aeonia Swamp in Caelid, specifically hanging from a body out of a window at a tower found here. You'll also want a seal for casting incantations, but we are only casting buffs with this seal, so any seal with 0 weight will do, as scaling just doesn't affect buffs. As for our talismans then, we are of course using the classic Shard of Alexander. This talisman is just too good to ignore, giving you a 15% damage buff to all weapon skills, and as the main two things that we are using for this are a pushing weapon skill and a pulling weapon skill, it just seems silly to avoid it. To get this talisman for yourself, you have to complete a short questline that will take you all over the map. First, you have to meet Alexander in the desert where you fight Radon, then find him once more again in the lava pools west of Seathwater Terminus on Mount Gelmir, and then finally once more by the Dragon Temple lift in crumbling Farum Azula. After that, we have the Magic Scorpion Talisman, as the weapon skills are partly physical based and partly magic based. This talisman will boost the magic portion of our damage by around 12.5% at the cost of lowering our damage negation stats. You can get this for yourself as part of the Saluvis questline within the game. I will mention as well that it is not worth using this talisman in PvP, as the damage buff is reduced and the damage negation is still a thing. So instead, I would recommend either using the Dragon Crest Great Shield talisman or the Air Tree's Favor +2 talisman just for some utility and defense. The third talisman today is the Carrion Filigreed Crest. This reduces the FP cost of weapon skills by 25%, which is quite a noticeable amount, and given that our two main points of focus in this build are both weapon skills, this is quite useful, especially as neither skill is particularly cheap to use. This one is acquired simply by purchasing it from the blacksmith E.G. found beside the Road to the Manor Site of Grace in Liurnia. The final talisman today is the Bull Goat's Talisman, which lowers incoming poise damage by 25%, effectively making it harder to break through your poise. The usefulness of this will sort of depend on your opponent, as it just provides a slight poise bump. It can bring you from making it through short sword attacks to making it through great sword attacks, but it won't just straight up make you hyper armor through a troll's club or anything like that. It is great for getting the Ash of War off in more situations than you would otherwise, but if you find it isn't helping you in your current fight, I'd recommend one of the utility talismans mentioned earlier instead. To acquire this though, simply go pick it up off of a corpse at the back of the Dragon Barrow Cave in the northeast end of Caelid. Then of course, as both Ashes of War have magic damage components to mess with your enemy's positioning, we can actually get quite some use out of the Terra Magica sorcery, which boosts all magic damage by 35% while you're stood inside of the circle and for a couple of seconds after you leave. You can pull enemies into the circle, and you can also push them back away from it if you want some space. It just sort of works with the build, at least in PvE content. To get this for yourself, simply progress to the end of the Academy Crystal Cave on the western side of the lake in the Liurnia region. Past that, we have the two incantations that you can expect to see in nearly every build.
Oh, you again.
Which are, of course, Golden Vow for a 15% increase in all damage output, as well as a 10% increase in damage negation for 90 seconds after casting. This can be found in the Corpse Stench Shack on the eastern side of Mount Gelmir. And then also Flame Grant Me Strength, which boosts physical and fire damage by 20% for 30 seconds, and this one can be found outside the back of Fort Gale on the western side of Caelid, between two spicy food wagons. Finally then, we have the Flask of Wondrous Physic, and as you may expect, I am recommending the Magic Shrouding Cracked tier for a 20% magic damage increase while active, and you can get this one from the boss at the Minor Air Tree at the northeastern side of the Liurnia region. The other tier, you can just use whatever you want. This is a personal choice slot, and I would recommend using something utility based. And those are all the individual little pieces, but what about the attributes as well? Well, this is where things get a little bit tricky with this one, but it also means that it can get significantly stronger if you level up past 150 in a New Game Plus playthrough. That said, at 150, here is what we're working with in the footage. You want to hit 50 strength and 50 intelligence to get the most out of the Ashes of War without overloading your attribute space. Then you want to hit a minimum of 40 vigor to be able to survive endgame bosses, but the closer you can get to 60, the better, obviously. We also have 25 faith to let us cast both of our buffing incantations, 16 dexterity is the requirement to use both of the weapons, 18 endurance is enough to reach a medium roll with all of our equipped gear, and then 20 mind is a nice strong point to work from that lets you cast both weapon abilities a far amount too. The build is great at clearing out big groups of enemies. The pull is quite long range, so if you ever get surrounded, you just need one good pulse to clear the group. And then of course the push skill does quite a bit more damage, but also has a notably smaller range to compensate. Any boss that is small enough to be affected by knockbacks can just be made to look like a fool with this if you time it right. It's just silly gravity fun. Players can be a bit harder to catch out with it, as all they have to do is time a roll pretty well, but you can still absolutely catch them out regardless if you know what you're doing. I find a lot of the time when I'm using this, I wind up causing double victories, as in we both die, because people just don't expect the poise of this attack and its ability to trade as of 1.07. All in all, this is just a fun build that is also relatively effective. If you like the sound of messing with your enemies, whether they be human or AI, this is a really cool build to play. I hope you've all enjoyed this one, and let me know if you like it if you make it for yourself too. Let us know if there are any other fun or crazy ideas for a build that you've got stored away, and we'll mess with it and turn it into a reality. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.